We're continuing our review of Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. Today we're going to tackle episode 7, The Viewing, directed by Panos Cosmatos. I'm sorry, that was a terrible pronunciation, but it was literally the best I could do. I was kind of interested to see this episode because I know this director also did Mandy, so they have like an stylized technique that I wanted to see more of and get a better sense of. I also was really excited going into this episode because The Viewing left so much open. Like, were we going to be doing a house show? Were we going to be like viewing a ritual or like a certain kind of play? Is the whole concept of The Viewing a false pretense to get a group of people over to do nefarious things to? It just felt like this episode had so much potential. And going in, I continued to be excited when I saw we were going to have like a Velma-like female character, a kind of like washed up writer, a music writer who it seems like has seen some things. It just felt like there were going to be a lot of elements and character archetypes that I usually enjoy in Guillermo del Toro's work. So even though this was like a different director, he, produced the whole thing, and I was hoping to get some of that intrigue and interest. And there were some cool things happening in this episode, but it was so glacially slow. And it ended up just being like a long conversation in an interesting looking room. The conversation was really not about anything. There were so many scenes we didn't need, and there was so much stuff going on that wasn't necessary. We could have probably halved the time of this and still had generally the same effect. Like I'm personally into slow burns, and even for my taste, The Viewing just goes on at such a slow pace and the payoff is not there for it. And that is one thing about any kind of slow burn story you tell. If it takes you a long time to get to it, it has to be very rich in payoff. It has to tie back to the stuff that we brought in before. It has to like convince the viewer that everything building up to it had purpose and that it was worth that wait. And for me, The Viewing just doesn't do that. I still think The Viewing is really pretty. I wasn't particularly enthralled with the monster effects at the end or like the egg or the meteor or whatever it was. All of the fantasy science fiction elements visually were lacking, and they were on the screen for too short a time with too little backstory or meaning to deliver any kind of storytelling payoff or speculative element. Overall, I'm going to have to give The Viewing like a 2.5, 2-star kind of rating. Of everything I've viewed so far, this is the one that I would really struggle to recommend to anyone for any reason. I guess if you want a little taste of the crazy sort of directing that you see in Mandy, that might be something The Viewing could be good for. It's a shame because I really wanted to like this, but it just didn't pull together for me. And I think some of the richest elements in The Viewing are things regarding the cinematography and the filming and the set design. And while I do talk about that stuff like a little bit in this channel, I'm not like a big expert on it. And while I definitely think it enhances a story, especially something told in a visual medium, it's not something that I can like wax poetically on forever about for most stories, if that's all that's going on. So I'm going to leave like a longer review of The Viewing for someone who has more expertise in those areas. I'd say if you're not interested in those technical aspects or in like that visual component or that really stylized look this particular director goes for, there's literally nothing here for you in this particular episode. Did you like The Viewing? Where is it ranking for you in Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities? Tell me in those comments down below. And as always, keep reading. Bye.